72%. I mean, that is the number that just completely jumped out at me this morning.
It's a massive figure.
Right. According to a 2025 McKinsey report, 72% of European enterprises are no longer just, running those isolated pilot programs with AI.
Yeah, those days are over.
Exactly. They have fully deployed multi-agent AI systems for autonomous task execution. And if you are listening to this right now, whether you're a business leader, a CTO, or, say, a lead developer evaluating your strategy, that number really should be a wake-up call.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if you're still evaluating AI based on tools that just summarize text or, draft a polite email, the landscape has fundamentally shifted beneath your feet. You might already be behind the curve.
You probably are behind. And I think the sheer scale of that deployment is what makes this specific moment in time so critical.
Yeah, why right now?
Well, when we examine the ecosystem today, particularly the 2026 Rotterdam enterprise landscape, we are witnessing a total operational rewiring.
Rewiring, I like that.
Yeah, because agentic AI, these autonomous agents that actively plan, execute, and actually collaborate with one another, it's moved from the fringes of innovation labs directly into the core operational infrastructure.
Right. It's not a toy anymore.
No, not at all. We're seeing it run the primary engines of logistics firms, financial institutions, heavy industrial sectors. It's no longer just an accessory bolted onto existing software. It is becoming the central nervous system of the organization.
Which is actually the primary mission for our deep dive today. We're looking at a comprehensive piece of research from AetherLink.
Right, the new guide.
Yeah, it's titled Agentic AI and Human Collaboration, Enterprise Guide for Rotterdam 2026. And we are going to extract the actionable insights you actually need to navigate this architectural shift without getting bogged down in endless white paper.
Which nobody has time for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this. To understand how to actually implement this infrastructure, we first need to establish the baseline of what has actually changed. Because we aren't just moving past basic Gen AI here. We are moving past traditional robotic process automation, or RPA entirely.
Yeah, and that distinction between traditional RPA and agentic AI is, well, it's the perfect foundational concept.
How so?
So RPA was essentially a train running on incredibly rigid, fixed tracks. You had to map out every single if-then statement.
Right, and if anything changed.
Boom. If a variable changed, like if an invoice format changed slightly, or a vendor API updated the train derailed, and a human developer had to go in and manually fix the tracks.
That sounds exhausting.
It was. But agentic AI is fundamentally different because it possesses real-time environmental awareness.
So no fixed tracks.
Exactly. It doesn't need them. It understands the end goal, and it continuously monitors KPIs, regulatory changes, operational constraints to dynamically figure out the how. Oh, and actually, Gartner's 2025 hype cycle shows enterprise adoption of these frameworks is already at 43% maturity in Northern Europe.
Wow, 43%. So the way I kind of conceptualize this leap is by looking at the evolution of navigation.
Oh, yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
Like, traditional automation is like a standard GPS, right?
Yeah.
You type in an address, and it gives you a rigid route based on static maps.
Right.
But if a bridge is suddenly closed, you still have to physically turn the wheel, pull out your phone, figure out a detour.
You're still doing the driving.
Exactly. But agentic AI is like a fully autonomous off-road vehicle mapping its own terrain. It doesn't just calculate the route, it actively drives.
Right.
If it senses a massive traffic jam 3 miles ahead via satellite data, it just reroutes automatically. It pays the digital toll on the highway, and crucially, it asks you if you want to pull over because it correlated the time of day with your usual coffee habit.
That is exactly it. And applying that off-road vehicle analogy to an enterprise setting reveals the true paradigm shift here.
Because it's a lot bigger than just one car.
Way bigger. That vehicle isn't just driving as a single person. It is navigating global supply chains, managing real-time financial compliance, orchestrating port logistics with thousands of moving parts.
Right.
But here's the kicker. A single agent rarely works alone. The true power unlocks when you deploy a multi-agent ecosystem.
Okay, understanding the overarching definition is super helpful, but, theoretical concepts kind of fall flat without a practical mechanism.
Sure.
And the AetherLink article provides this brilliant, granular example of an anonymized Rotterdam pharmaceutical distributor.
Oh, that's a great case study.
Yeah, they completely restructured their supply chain. They didn't just buy a new software dashboard. They deployed a literal team of AI agents, each with a specialized cognitive role.
And the architectural genius of that specific deployment is how they compartmentalized the cognitive labor.
Right, breaking it down.
Yeah, and they allowed those agents to communicate through shared data vectors.
Yeah.
They didn't build one massive monolithic AI trying to do everything. They build specialists.
Right. So let's break down the mechanics of how that actually operates on, say, a random Tuesday morning.
Let's do it.
You have a demand agent, and this agent isn't just looking at historical sales.
No, it's way more proactive.
Right. It is continuously pulling in localized weather patterns, search engine trends, regional point-of-sale data. Let's say it detects a localized spike in flu symptoms in Utrecht.
Okay.
It immediately updates a shared data vector, and then the procurement agent instantly reads that state change.
Without anyone telling it to.
Exactly. Without a human ever clicking an approve button, that procurement agent cross-references existing supplier APIs, calculates the fastest shipping route, and autonomously issues the purchase orders to secure the extra cold medicine.
Which is incredible on its own. But furthermore, that transaction triggers the compliance agent.
Right, because pharmaceuticals are heavily regulated.
Exactly. So this agent instantly begins monitoring the IoT temperature sensors on the incoming delivery trucks. It dynamically generates the regulatory documentation required for cold chain compliance.
It's all in the background.
All in the background.
Yeah.
And running parallel to all of this is the exception agent, whose sole directive is to monitor the entire ecosystem for anomalies.
Like what kind of anomalies?
Say, a sudden port strike in Rotterdam. It immediately flags the disruption and calculates 3 alternative rerouting options through Antwerp.
Wow. And the business outcomes from this specific multi-agent structure are just staggering.
Oh, the numbers are wild.
We're talking about a 34% decrease in cycle time from demand signal to product delivery.
Yep.
An 18% drop in tied-up working capital because, well, they aren't overstocking inventory anymore.
Right.
And 0 compliance violations over an 18-month period.
Yeah.
And I have to push back hard on the reality of this setup here.
Okay, go for it.
Look at those roles. The agents are doing the predictive forecasting, they're physically executing the buying, they are managing the complex compliance, and they're doing the logistical rerouting.
They are.
So aren't we just automating humans entirely out of the enterprise at this point? Like, how is this not just a very polite corporate way of describing mass worker replacement?
I mean, it's the most persistent and valid concern in literally every boardroom discussing this technology.
That's what I meant.
The surface level assumption is always replacement. But the operational reality, as documented in the research, highlights a critical distinction. Agentic AI eliminates human drudgery, but it absolutely relies on human judgment.
Okay.
The deployment goal is workforce evolution, not workforce elimination. We actually have to look at the Ethermine consultancy case study involving a Rotterdam port operator to see the actual psychological shift here.
Okay, but eliminating drudgery is, it's the oldest, most tired cliche in the tech industry.
That's fair.
Every software vendor claims their product eliminates drudgery so humans can, quote, focus on high-level strategy.
Right.
So why is this fundamentally different from the promises made during the SaaS boom of the 2010s?
Because the nature of human value within the enterprise is undergoing a hard pivot.
How so?
Well, historically, human value was derived from providing answers. You memorized the spreadsheet, you knew the shipping schedules, you provided the answer to a routing problem.
Right, you were the database.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But by deploying these multi-agent systems, that port operator reduced manual scheduling decisions by 84%.
84%.
Yeah. The AI is now providing the answers. Therefore, the human's value has shifted from providing answers to asking the right questions.
That is a massive psychological shift.
It really is.
So instead of a worker spending 8 hours cross-referencing arrival times and manually dragging and dropping schedules in a terminal operating system, they are stepping back and looking at the overall cargo flow strategy.
Precisely. They move from being data entry clerks to acting as strategic air traffic controllers.
Oh, I like that.
And employee satisfaction actually increased significantly in that port operator study because the cognitive load of repetitive task execution was just removed.
They could actually breathe.
Yeah. They focused entirely on exception handling, those highly complex, nuanced logistical knots that require relationship building and institutional intuition that an AI simply does not possess.
That makes sense.
But bridging that gap is incredibly precarious. I mean, the Forrester 2025 AI Change Management Survey revealed that 67% of failed agentic AI deployments collapsed due to organizational resistance.
Wow. Not technical limitation?
Nope, not technical. The underlying code and APIs only represent about 40% of the challenge. The human factor is the other 60%.
That actually makes perfect sense. If you suddenly tell your procurement team, hey, this black box algorithm is going to handle 80% of your multi-million euro purchasing budget starting Monday, their first instinct is going to be sheer panic.
Total panic.
They're going to assume the AI will make a catastrophic mistake and they will be the ones fired for it.
Exactly.
So how do you actually architect the system to build trust so that 67% failure rate doesn't happen to you?
It requires a complete ground-up redesign of the human-AI interface. The foundational principle for successful adoption is transparency by default.
Meaning what, exactly?
An agent cannot simply output a final decision like a magic 8-ball. It must communicate its underlying reasoning, the data vectors it prioritized, and its statistical confidence levels in plain, natural language.
Ah, so it has to show its work, like a student in a high-level calculus class.
That's a great way to put it.
Can't just write down the answer. It has to write out the formula it used to get there.
Exactly the right framework.
Yeah.
An agent needs to communicate something like, I am routing this shipment through Antwerp instead of Rotterdam to avoid the port strike. However, my confidence score in this route's efficiency is only 72% because historical data on Antwerp's overflow capacity during strikes is highly volatile.
Wow. So it flags its own uncertainty.
Yes, and this gives the human operator the exact context needed to intervene, which introduces the mechanism of learning from rejection.
I find the mechanism of learning from rejection fascinating. It shifts the dynamic entirely.
It really does.
Because when a human operator looks at that 72% confidence score and decides to override the agent's decision, it isn't recorded as a system failure.
Nope.
The interface prompts the human to input the rationale for the override. And that specific human judgment is then fed back into the model's parameters.
Exactly.
You are essentially mentoring the AI in real time, treating it more like a junior analyst than a piece of rigid software.
And empowering humans to actively mentor the system is what ultimately neutralizes that organizational resistance we talked about.
Right.
But the moment we empower these agents to execute real-world supply chain calls and financial purchases, even with human oversight on the exceptions, we trigger an immediate legal tripwire.
Oh, right.
The level of autonomy we are discussing fundamentally changes an enterprise's risk profile in Europe.
Which pulls us right out of the theoretical architecture and straight into the legal reality of 2026. We have to talk about the European Union AI Act.
We do.
If these autonomous systems are making thousands of micro-decisions an hour, the liability shifts dramatically.
The EU AI Act completely rewrites the rules of engagement for enterprise technology. Under this legislation, any AI system that touches employment decisions, critical infrastructure, financial services, or essential private services is automatically classified as high risk.
Wait, but when you look at the multi-agent ecosystem we just discussed, almost all of those agents touch high-risk categories.
Yep.
The procurement agent deciding which vendor gets a massive contract directly impacts employment and finance.
Absolutely.
The compliance agent monitoring pharmaceutical temperatures is undeniably touching critical health infrastructure.
The regulatory net is incredibly wide. And because these systems fall into the high-risk categorization, the legal requirements for deployment are severe.
What kind of requirements?
Enterprises must conduct rigorous pre-deployment conformity assessments. They must maintain immutable audit trails for every single decision the agent makes.
Wow.
But most challenging of all is the mandate for explainability. If a regulator knocks on your door, you cannot point to a neural network and say, well, the algorithm decided it.
The magic 8-ball excuse doesn't work.
Exactly. You must mathematically and logically prove how the decision was reached. You must also prove you have mandatory human-in-loop mechanisms and comprehensive bias documentation.
And we aren't talking about minor compliance fines here either. The penalties for failing to meet these standards are, frankly, existential for many mid-market enterprises.
They really are. The fines for deploying a non-compliant high-risk system can reach up to 30 million.
Wait, 30 million?
Or up to 6% of a company's total global annual revenue, whichever is higher.
6% of global revenue is a catastrophic financial event.
It's game over for a lot of companies.
Yet, according to a 2025 Deloitte study cited in the research, 58% of enterprises currently experimenting with agentic AI have not even comprehensively mapped their systems to these specific risk categories.
Which is terrifying.
They're just deploying autonomous agents into their networks without understanding the legal blast radius. You know, governance constantly gets a bad reputation in developer circles.
Always.
It's viewed as bureaucratic friction designed to just slow down innovation. But the way I view this level of compliance is like the brakes on a high-performance race car.
Okay. I like where this is going.
You don't install a €50,000 carbon ceramic braking system on a Formula One car because you want to drive slowly. You install the best brakes in the world so you can drive into the corners at 200 miles an hour, completely confident that you won't crash into the wall.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, building on that racing analogy, the organizational structure needed to manage this isn't just the mechanic installing the brakes.
Right.
Forward-thinking enterprises are establishing AI centers of excellence, or COEs.
Okay, COEs.
Yeah, a COE acts as the real-time telemetry system for that race car. Well, the multi-agent system is moving at 200 miles an hour. The COE is constantly monitoring the temperature of the brakes. They're running the continuous bias testing, managing the model versioning, ensuring the audit trails are perfectly formatted for regulators, all without slowing down the operational execution.
Setting up a functional center of excellence that operates as a real-time telemetry system sounds like a massive organizational undertaking.
It is.
You can't just assign 3 developers and a lawyer to a committee and call it a COE.
No, definitely not.
So this brings us to the actual roadmap to readiness. How does an enterprise physically get from where they are today to running a fully compliant multi-agent ecosystem?
Well, the Ethermind consultancy arm runs a readiness assessment across 8 dimensions.
Right, including data maturity, talent, and governance.
Exactly. And out of a possible score of 10, the average Rotterdam enterprise right now is scoring between a 5.2 and a 6.1.
Which doesn't sound great.
A score of 5.2 indicates a dangerous middle ground. It means the enterprise has the fundamental infrastructure, like their data is likely centralized in a cloud environment, and they have experimented with large language models.
So they have the basics.
Right. But they entirely lack the rigid governance frameworks, the cohesive change management strategies, and the integrated API architecture required to actually let autonomous agents communicate with each other safely at scale.
So if a CTO is sitting there with a 5.5 readiness score, what is the actual timeline to get to deployment? Because the research outlines a 12 to 18-month roadmap.
It does.
And I have to admit, my immediate reaction to a 12 to 18-month timeline is heavy skepticism.
Oh, really?
Yeah. If the core LLM technology is already available via API, why on earth do months 1 and 2 of this roadmap explicitly call for no coding? That sounds suspiciously like a consultancy firm padding their billable hours by running endless stakeholder alignment workshops.
The skepticism is understandable, especially in tech culture obsessed with moving fast and breaking things.
Exactly.
But moving fast and breaking things with a multi-agent financial system results in a $30 million fine. Months 1 and 2 involve no coding, because the friction of deployment is rarely technical. It is structural. If you skip the data governance mapping and fail to align the legal, HR, and IT departments on the exact parameters of the human-in-the-loop escalation protocols,
Then what happens?
any code you write in month 1 will have to be completely torn down in month 3 when compliance flags it.
Okay, that makes sense. So assuming the foundational governance is locked in, how do we start rolling the vehicles out of the garage?
Months 3 through 5 are dedicated entirely to non-critical, isolated pilots.
So you don't touch the core supply chain.
Absolutely not. You deploy an agent in a low-risk internal workflow, perhaps internal IT ticketing or basic data reconciliation.
Okay.
The goal here is not massive ROI. The goal is to validate your compliance telemetry and begin the cultural change management. You are teaching your employees how to interact with the agent, how to read confidence scores, how to use the rejection feedback loop.
So you are testing the brakes in an empty parking lot before you take the car to the track?
Precisely. Once the human-AI interface is culturally accepted and technically stable, months 6 through 9 are the expansion phase.
This is where it gets real.
Yeah, you move the agents into business-critical processes. This is where the procurement agent and the demand agent come online. The Center of Excellence is fully empowered here, actively auditing the system's decisions daily.
Right.
And finally, months 10 through 12 represent the maturation phase. The multi-agent ecosystem operates autonomously with continuous monitoring. The human operators have fully transitioned to strategic oversight, and the enterprise begins realizing those massive drops in cycle time and working capital.
So what does this all mean? We have mapped out a tremendous amount of architectural and strategic territory today. From moving past rigid RPA into environmentally aware agents, to the mechanical reality of shared data vectors, to navigating the strict legal tripwires of the EU AI Act.
It's a lot to take in.
It is.
Yeah.
So to distill this 18-month journey down for the listener evaluating their next move, what is the absolute critical insight they need to take away from this research?
I'd say the fundamental paradigm shift is that regulatory compliance is no longer a constraint. It is a profound competitive differentiator.
Explain that.
If leadership views the EU AI Act purely as a bureaucratic hurdle to be minimized, the enterprise will stagnate. Conversely, treating rigid governance as a strategic asset builds immense trust with enterprise clients.
Right.
More critically, in 18 months, when your competitors are suddenly paralyzed by a regulatory audit because they deployed a black box model they cannot explain, your transparent, fully documented, multi-agent ecosystem will be scaling safely and capturing their market share.
Yeah.
Robust governance is the ultimate accelerator.
That is a powerful way to look at it. My major takeaway flips to the human element.
Oh, yeah.
The APIs, the data pipelines, the parameter tuning that is ultimately just mathematics and infrastructure. The true secret to successfully deploying agentic AI in 2026 is mastering change management. If you introduce this level of autonomy into your workforce without completely redefining your key performance indicators, you will trigger that 67% failure rate. You must stop incentivizing your teams based on the sheer volume of manual tasks they execute and aggressively start rewarding them for their brilliant strategic oversight of their digital colleagues.
Right, because their job has completely changed.
Exactly. If human value is now about asking the right questions, the compensation and KPI structures must reflect that reality immediately.
Absolutely.
But, this profound shift in human value leaves us with an incredibly complex dynamic to consider. We spent a lot of time discussing how humans are going to act as mentors to these systems,
Right.
how we will patiently override their poor decisions, feed that rationale back into the vector space, and teach the AI how to navigate our complex businesses.
Yeah.
But here is something to deeply consider as you architect your enterprise strategy. As these autonomous ecosystems process millions of variables a second, and as they continuously compound their intelligence from our daily corrections, they are going to optimize at a rate we literally cannot biologically match.
That's true.
So what happens on the day your agentic AI analyzes the entire global supply chain, cross-references it with your quarterly goals, and respectfully flags that your human strategy is actually the bottleneck? Are we culturally and organizationally prepared for the exact moment the tireless AI colleague transitions from being mentored by us to actively managing us?
Wow.
For more AI insights, visit etherlink.ai.